It's fantasy time.
Yeah, we're talking fantasy sports, not Dear Penthouse. But don't worry, winning your league is way better than porn.
This is Fantasy Hockey Time with Dean Millard.
Can you dig it?
Presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports.
Can you dig it?
Get in the game where you own the game.
Joe owned the Chiefs. Owns.
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Fantasy Hockey Time. This is episode 9, and very close to wrapping it up. Last show of Fantasy Hockey Time for this year will be next Sunday, as most leagues will be wrapping up in the fantasy realm, and then we'll tell you what's coming down the pipe from the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network as a different show that I'll be working on. But Fantasy Hockey Time is presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. We'll tell you all about them as we go, and you're watching this show on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. We'll give you the details on how you can get in on the fun with that. I'm here to help you win your league, or at the very least, I want to help your league get a little bit better. If I make you laugh on the way, that's fine. If I make you cry, that's probably more accurate. But with some different rules and suggestions and things like that, we can also try to make your fantasy hockey league a whole lot better. All right, let's get it going with the question of the day.
This is a serious message. Peace and love. Peace and love.
And it is with peace and love that I ask you, who has been your playoff MVP so far in fantasy hockey? One of my leagues, I didn't make it, made a big run for the playoffs and did not make it. So I'm down to the one league, and I'm in the final in that league. I just actually beat my former co-host on this sort of program, Jamie Thomas, in the Dagens Hockey League. I nudged him because he forgot to start a goalie who picked up a shutout. He forgot to start Varlamov one game, and that was basically the difference in that. But the waiver wire has been so good in the last little while. Bo Horvat was out there because the Canucks had struggled. He got 5 points in the last 2 weeks. Jamie Benn has turned things around, 18 shots in the past 14 days, 6 points as well. Tyler Toffoli has been awesome, though. He's got 5 goals. And then there's Shea Theodore. Big Shea Theodore, 10 points, 27 shots on goal, 10 blocks, 5 power play points in the one league I'm at. So if I'm looking at my roster right now, obviously a guy like Leon Draisaitl overall has been, the best player, but in the last little while, Shea Theodore has been dynamite. So my playoff MVP would be Shea Theodore because he has carried me for the past couple of weeks with just some stellar. And, I don't have him in the lineup, so I wasn't looking at it, but Mika Zibanejad, sorry for the oversight. I guess I have 2, a defense and a forward MVP. But if you have had Mika Zibanejad on your roster, you know that he's had almost 15 points in the last 2 weeks, almost 25 shots. He's throwing out some hits. So I guess I would go with Mika Zibanejad as my overall playoff MVP because the last week he has been dynamite. But anyway, hit me up on Twitter at Duck Millard. Chime in with your answer and let me know who has been your fantasy hockey playoff MVP. Big thanks to our title sponsor, Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. It's the most realistic and high-stakes fantasy platform out there. The UFHL mimics just about everything about the NHL. The season is about to wrap up for us, and then there's a playoff draft. Yeah, the franchises that don't make the playoffs, they get divided up to the franchises that do make the playoffs, and their NHL players in the playoffs then earn the money if that franchise gets some cash. And there's a lot of cash. So our prize pool is over $51,000, and what we've done is spread that over 3 years. So our prize pool this year is $31,000, and it's a progressive pool. So each year it keeps rising during the year. Next year and the year after that, they both start at $10,000. It's amazing. Also, $10,000 is the price that was paid for a franchise auctioned off as an expansion team, just like the Seattle Kraken. We have expansion. The Bentley Jacks They fetch 10 grand US because it's not just fantasy hockey. This is UFFS combining the Zilliqa blockchain with fantasy sports. These are NFTs, and I tell you, the things that they have going right now, it's going to blow your mind. So many people are going to be able to get involved in the NFT world, but in this league, there are only 32 franchises. So exclusivity galore, because there are only 32 teams, and there's going to only be one NFT of each player. So there's hockey, there's golf, football has been announced, as in the NFL, baseball, basketball. We've got a lot of stuff going. Get in the game where you own the game. www.uffsports.com. Here's the lineup today. 3.5 stars of the week. We'll get to 5 lineup decisions. Find out who's in the MASH 4077 unit. We'll have bold predictions, Fantasy Island, where I'll vote somebody off, vote somebody on. Fantasy Beef, what's bugging you about fantasy hockey this week? And we will have rules of engagement, where we'll tell you something how hopefully you can use to make your league better. As for getting a hold of me,
You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? Well, then who the hell else are you talking? You talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here.
on Twitter at Duck Millard. You can also get Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network at UFS Network. You can email me, fantasyhockeytimepod@gmail.com. Get the network at UFSN at UFFsports.com. And check out the details at fantasyhockeytime.com. Past episodes, plus the new website has dropped for Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. UFFsports.com is where you need to go to get all the information. All right, let's get her going.
Game on!
All right, we're dropping the puck this week with 3.5 stars. That's the top 3 and an honorable mention. The honorable mention goes to Cam Talbot. A former Oiler, always was great to deal with on the media side. If you ever saw him outside of the game, say hi, and he remembered the people that were asking him the questions, and he was a nice guy to deal with. And so I always like it when the nice guys do really, really well. And man, he did really, really well last week. 3-0, 101 saves, a .953 save percentage, and a .167 goals against average. So he gets the honorable mention, does Cam Talbot. Jonathan Huberdeau is the third star here on Fantasy Hockey Time. A goal and 6 helpers for the Panther. He was +6. He had 1 power play point and 10 shots on goal. Kevin Fiala gets the nod ahead of them. Even though he had 1 less point, he had more point production spread out. So he had 3 and 3 for 6 points, 3 goals, 3 assists. He was +3 if you have plus-minus in your league. Sorry about your luck. He also had a penalty, so he gets a bit of a notch there, depending on your categories. 3 of his 6 points came on the power play. If you get bonus for that, extra there. Also had a game-winning goal, and he had 11 shots. So good on Kevin Fiala for having a kick-ass week. And Tristan Jarry, former Edmonton Oil King goalie, another guy that was always really great to deal with on the media side when he was with the Oil Kings and helping them win a Memorial Cup. He was 3-0. He made 84 saves. So not as many saves as Cam Talbot, but his save percentage was .923. So that's a little bit lower. His goals against was .233. That's a little bit higher. However, Tristan Jarry had a shutout. So you get big bonus points for that. He also had an assist. If goalies don't get points in your league, they should. And we should get on that and make sure that goaltenders are going to get the right representation when it comes to fantasy, and they should be definitely getting fantasy points. All right, let's now get to 5 lineup decisions. And I told you for the last few episodes before the playoffs and even down the stretch, and I think I was talking about this in the middle of the season, keep Taylor Hall, stash him somewhere if you can. Hopefully you didn't give up on him because him and David Krejci are unbelievable. And when Hall got traded, I was so happy. Unfortunately, that's the league I lost out on because Krejci and Hall are lighting it up. 12 points combined in their last 7 games. Each of them have 6 in the last 7. Craig Smith is riding shotgun on the other side on that line. But the Bruins, they certainly have it going right now. The loss to Pittsburgh notwithstanding, they have been pretty consistent as of late as they start to get healthy again. Josh Norris is a very underrated player. That's the second decision I want you to know about because you should be looking into this guy. Brady Tkachuk and Thomas Chabot get a lot of the attention for the Ottawa Senators. Norris is in his rookie season. He has 30 points. He's tied for the team league. He's not as feisty as Tkachuk. Doesn't shoot the puck as much as Tkachuk. Nobody does. Tkachuk really is the shot machine. Tkachuk has more shots than Norris and Drake Batherson, who's also tied for the team lead, combined. Tkachuk has 194 shots this year. But anyway, Norris is underrated. He's owned just 19% in Yahoo. So maybe a guy you might want to look at on, down the stretch if you need a little bit of depth. The one guy I really would get in on, and I have, and I'll tell you about it later, is Nikita Gusev. He goes from Dancing with the Devil in Jersey to a top-line audition in Florida with Alexander Barkov. Sam Bennett has benefited from the Sunshine State, and so Gusev could be a huge free agent pickup that could help you win your league. That's what I'm banking on. He's owned by just 6% of teams in my one Yahoo league, and so I'll tell you about the waiver claim a little bit later on Fantasy Island. Matt Zuccarello, hidden in the Wild possibly. Maybe people think the Wild don't score points anymore, but less than 30% of rosters have this guy on their team in their league, and he's just under a point per game pace. 4 points in his past 5 games. That's hard production to turn down if you're in the final of a league. And it's a guy that I'm going to keep my eye on. He's gone already in my one league. But this is a guy that keep an eye on next year in drafts, because if you can get just under point per game production from this guy, and only 30% of teams roster him, obviously he's a guy you can steal in late rounds. And I'm a little bit tepid on Teuvo Teravainen. And he's supposed to be coming back. Apparently will not play tonight for the Canes, but I wouldn't be pinning my hopes on him if you're in a weekly league. Sorry about your luck. And in daily leagues, I would be waiting, I think, at least a game or two before he does anything. And then you can maybe grab him for the weekend if he comes back hotter than a pistol or something like that. But certainly, I like to give guys a little bit of time before they come back so they can get back in the fold. And that's the case for Ryan Ellis. Waited for a little while for him to get back into the fold, and now I picked him up. He was still available, so going into the playoffs, he was dropped after that injury, so should be an interesting one with that situation as well. If you're out there looking for a defenseman, check out Ryan Ellis in your league. There's the bonus point for 5 lineup decisions. All right, let's check out the MASH 4077 unit.
'Tis but a scratch. A scratch? Your arm's off. No, it isn't. Well, what's that then? I've heard worse. You've got no arms left. Yes, I have. Look, just a flesh wound. What are you going to do, bleed on me? I'm invincible!
All right, well, unfortunately, a lot of NHL players are not invincible. As we take a look at who's in the MASH unit, Ryan Getzlaf left Saturday night's game. They face the Kings tonight, so check on that, adjust accordingly. It's an upper body injury. A lot of speculation about what's going to happen with Getzlaf next year. He's going to be an interesting free agent to monitor. Mikko Rantanen in COVID protocol. Also, Jonas Donskoy and Philip Grubauer for the Avalanche. Jonas Korpisalo, lower body injury, left the game on Sunday, faces the Wings on Tuesday. Watch for that if you're riding the Korpisalo train in the playoffs. John Klingberg, lower body, he's day-to-day. Game time decision tonight against the Hurricanes. And, man, I really like John Klingberg. I feel for a guy, and I know has Klefbom, Zach Werenski, and John Klingberg, and they've all gone down on injuries in the last little while, so it's just really, really tough. Dylan Larkin out for the season with an upper body injury, injured against the Stars. That's tough to see, not only for fantasy owners, but Detroit Red Wing fans, and of course the player himself. And Alexander Ovechkin has a lower body injury. It said day-to-day, unclear for Tuesday. Apparently didn't practice on Monday, so watch that. It's just so tough to be in the playoffs, and you have such key players injured. So hopefully Ovechkin gets back into the lineup very soon. All right, I've got a bold prediction about Ryan Ellis when we return.
This is Fantasy Hockey Time with Dean Millard.
It's a rout. It's a blowout.
Fantasy Hockey Time is part of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, your one-stop fantasy sports shop. We're building something all fantasy fans will love, and we are looking for quality programming to join us. Reach out if you're interested in being part of the rotation, whether it's a daily, weekly, or even monthly show. If it's about fantasy, we'd love to chat. Follow at UFF Sports, at UFH League, and at UFS Network for more information on how you own the game. Check out all the details at www.uffsports.com.
Hear me now and believe this later.
Prediction? Yes, prediction.
Pain.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
We want to pump you up.
All right, I mentioned I was waiting a little bit on Ryan Ellis, kind of had him on a bit of a watch, and that's what my bold prediction is this week, that Ryan Ellis has a 6-point week, 3 of them on the power play. So hopefully that happens because I just recently picked him up for the finals in the Dagans Hockey League. So Ryan Ellis, 6-point week for the Preds, as he is now slowly but surely getting up to steam with getting back in action. Ryan Ellis, my bold prediction this week.
Welcome to Fantasy Island.
All right, time to vote.
Wendell is cut. Rudy is cut. Janie, you're gone. Steven, I like your hustle.
Get him a uniform.
Congratulations. The rest of you made the team. Except you, and you.
All right, as for Fantasy Island this week, here's what I'm going with. Nikita Gusev is on. I'm on the Gusev train. If he's getting an audition on the top line with Barkov, I want to ride that possible instant chemistry or, just shrapnel of points that I can get for Gusev. So I picked him up for the playoffs. I also, as mentioned, picked up Ryan Ellis. I dropped Adrian Kempe. Thought I could quickly cash in on him. It didn't exactly work out, so still in the final and picking up Gusev. I also, to get Ryan Ellis, I dropped Marc-Andre Fleury of the Golden Knights. The other 2 goalies I have are Braden Holtby, and the Canucks have been a great story since coming back, and Jordan Binnington, who plays all the time. So I just wanted to get more offense from the blue line and plus I wanted to get another guy in tonight and get as many points off the bat as I can in the Daily League final championship. So that's who I voted on. Fantasy Island is Nikita Gusev, and I've said thanks for coming. Here is your plane ticket home. Thank you very much for being a part of the Jean-Guy Lafleur fantasy hockey team, Adrian Kempe. We'll get into my fantasy beef and rules of fantasy engagement when we come back.
This is Fantasy Hockey Time with Dean Millard.
When you pull on that jersey, you represent yourself and your teammates. And a name on the front is a hell of a lot more important than the one on the back.
Fantasy Hockey Time is presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. It's the most realistic fantasy platform around. The Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League mimics almost everything about the NHL. From a scouting program, Craig Button is the head scout of High Level Scouting, owned by my wife, and you are scouting real-world players and then selling them. They get auctioned off to the franchises and so on. There's also head-to-head playoff series, so we go right until the Stanley Cup or our Klein Cup is handed out. We have a playoff draft where you pick from non-playoff fantasy franchises, and they aren't just fantasy players. These are NFTs, digital assets on the Zilliqa blockchain. With UFFS, you own the game, so get in the game, www.uffsports.com, and you can find out exactly how you can get in the game.
Am I hot? Yeah, I'm hot.
It's some bull crap.
I'm your huckleberry.
Well, we're waiting.
That's a crock of crap.
You shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
All right, so for fantasy beef, I don't have a whole lot to complain about in the fantasy world right now. Things are rolling pretty well. I guess the only thing, and this is just a general beef, not really a complaint, but more of like, I feel the pain of injuries in the playoffs. We looked at the MASH 4077 unit, and there's some big names on there. If Alexander Ovechkin doesn't come back, Mikko Rantanen is out. The starting goaltender in Colorado, Grubauer. They have Devin Dubnyk, but if you don't on your fantasy team, you're counting on these guys. It happened to me in my basketball league. Kawhi Leonard was unavailable last week, and I was like, wow, this basically cost me a spot in the semifinals. So it's more of just like, it sucks when you build all year long to try to put the best team out there, and whether it's an injury or it's COVID, which is obviously out of our control, and there's certainly bigger things to complain about when it comes to COVID than fantasy sports. But, we are talking about fantasy sports, so a lot of people put some time and money into it. If you're in the UFHL, you're putting a lot of money and time into it. Our league fees next year could be $1,000 because our prize pool is $31,000 for this year. So I feel for teams and franchises and owners and GMs in fantasy sports when they do all that hard work and then an injury costs them their best player, and then boom. But it's just like in the NHL, when, a key guy goes down or something like that, you're just not going to be as successful. You take a McDavid or a Draisaitl or, a Pettersson or a Horvat or any of these players away from these top teams, you're obviously going to have a significant, and, it's the same thing. But this is fantasy, and we like to, you like to feel like you've built that championship team, and, or a benching, right? That's totally out of your control. A little bit maybe more in football or things like that, but a guy gets benched or something like that, and it's totally out of your control. So just a little tip of the cap to teams that are in the playoffs or in the finals right now dealing with injuries. Certainly all the rest of the fantasy owners feel your pain.
Smokey, this is not Nam. This is bowling. There are rules.
I don't think it taints it.
What'd you talk about, mister?
All you have to do is follow 3 simple rules.
Okay, so the rule I have for you today on this segment is kind of something, I'm piggybacking off something we do in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. As I mentioned, when the playoffs start, our league continues. Most leagues are wrapping up this week. This is the last week, or maybe they'll go one more. And things like that. But what we do is we go right to the playoffs. And then the franchises in our league that make the playoffs go on. But a lot of their players are not going to be in the playoffs. So we've plucked from the rest of the teams. So kind of off of that idea, in a league that's, sort of a smaller keeper league, not as in-depth as what ours would be, I think it'd be cool to do playoff leasing. So you go into the playoffs in your fantasy league with your roster because the NHL playoffs haven't started. But each round, you can redraft if you want to, and you can take players from. So you could beat a team that had Ovechkin on it, and then pick up Ovechkin for the next round. But however many players you have, it ups the percentage. So you would have to give a percentage to Alexander Ovechkin's team. So in this instance, if I lost out and I had Draisaitl on my team, which I do in one of my leagues, Jamie Thomas would have been able to pick up Draisaitl for the final. Things like that, or I think that'd be kind of cool. And then you just have to share the percentage of wealth from the teams, and maybe you modify it and say you can only pick a guy from a team you beat, and you can only take one guy, and then you got to drop a guy off your roster. That might be kind of a cool modification. So I beat Jamie Thomas. I just like to keep saying that I beat Jamie Thomas in a match, and I get to pick up one player from his team, and then I have to drop a player accordingly, but then I go on, and then I got to give Jamie like a small percentage of any winnings that I have. So just might be kind of a neat wrinkle in your fantasy league. I certainly don't think, you get the player back. Jamie would get the player back after the playoffs. It's just a sort of a leasing situation, which is something that we do in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. All right, that's going to wrap things up for our second last episode. As mentioned, we'll tell you a little bit later, well, sometime next week, what is going to be replacing this show on a different day, though. It certainly will be coming at you on a different day. Check out the Ultimate franchise fantasy sports website, UFFsports.com. You can register as a fan, a scout, a staff member, as an owner. Get in the game where you own the game at UFFsports.com. Great shows on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, your one-stop fantasy shop. Follow along on Twitter at UFS Network. Find UFSN on YouTube. If you have a fantasy show, hit us up. We would love for you to join us. We've got the UFFS podcast every second Sunday. This show on Mondays, until next week. 2-Minute Tuesdays with Darren Bates. Tracking the Draft with myself and Craig Button comes out Wednesdays. He'll join us from the U18s this week. And UFHL Now on Friday. And some more shows to come on the amazing UFSN YouTube channel. As for me, you can find all of my shows at podcastalley.ca. I've got some sports. I've got a cannabis education show as well. So check out all of that at your leisure and have a lot of fun, get some new shows, and relax. That is going to wrap things up for me on this episode. Big thanks to Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network for allowing this show on the network. Have a great week in fantasy. Good luck to everybody in the finals. I know I will be hopefully popping a champagne cork at the end of this week for a championship, and I hope you will as well. Thanks for watching Fantasy Hockey Time, presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Good luck in the final, everybody.